Hi, this is Marty Fiddleman. Welcome to Behind the Laughs. So hopefully there'll be laughs tonight. Hope you have a great show. We're here with Liz Glazer,
Hi,
and she's
Marty.
very funny. She's very entertaining. She does a great job. She's got a very unique story from her role in becoming a stand-up comedian. And she just moves. We got a lot to talk about, and I hope you enjoy. And then I think later on we can show me a bit of your comments so people know what we're talking about. That would make a hell of a lot more sense.
Oh, yeah.
There's no audience here, obviously. There's no audience. I can't bring people in here because I'll have a COVID by the time the show is over. So I don't want to do that.
Hopefully
That'd be a
not.
horrible idea.
Sure.
Great. The music is done. It's one of the little intros. Sound like we're in a jazz club, but we're not anymore. So it's back.
I like
back to,
it. Well,
thank
I
you.
like the invitation to relax when performing because it's the kind of thing. I don't know if you feel this way, Marty, but like I get nervous. Like it is, I have come to believe that it's a core aspect of my being as a regular person, my being as a performer, that I am a nervous person. I have some stories that go with this, sort of overall story about my life, but I feel that way. And playing jazz just kind of, I don't know, like it's loose, it's windy, it's, background. I love that it's like sort of soft. And so I appreciate that.
Yeah. I do shows, I produce shows, and I wanted to be able to have music like in the introduction and do stuff. And I once had a guy playing the keyboard, and
Yeah,
that just didn't work out. It didn't work,
sure.
But I wanted to do something because when you're introduced, it does. When you play the music ahead of time, it gets the audience ready. It's like something is
Yeah,
going to happen.
yeah,
Like you're playing the previews at a movie theater. You know something's going to happen amazing. So
sure.
that's what
Right,
it is. But
right.
well, I'm glad you're here today, and
Yeah.
this is good. We should have a good time. But Liz has had a unique approach to comedy. No one, not many people have done this. In fact, nobody has done this. You were a tenured law school professor,
Yeah.
and then one day you decided that's it. Is that
Yeah.
was it?
I
Was it
mean,
a long time? And you say I just and that was like was our final straw?
it wasn't so much that. I mean, like any story that's like a big story, right? Like birth, death, breakup, like anything that's big, or leaving a job, especially a job that's like, that you thought you might have forever, that you sought refuge in as an identity, a way of understanding yourself, through this job and title and whatever. And it was all those things. And then, yes, one day I did leave. And so the reason that I can answer yes to your question and have that be the simple answer is that ultimately any big moment does boil down to like one moment that is the last time you went to work, and the last decision, the moment. And so there was that, but it wasn't so much the last straw, but there was ramp up. um and
It was
and
what? It was
so
what?
like ramp up
Oh, I see.
to
Ramp
the
up. Yeah, I thought
thing
you.
where it wasn't.
Yeah, I thought you
Yeah,
said
and,
that.
and I
Okay.
guess, I mean, when I hear the last straw, what that says to me is like I had been grumbling every single day to work for however many years, and then finally something happened, and then I was so fed up and I happened to leave. And that just wasn't the story. It's not to say that my job was perfect, or that 100% I was like into it and loved it, or else I would still be there. However, I think if I were more fed up and it was sort of a last straw thing, the story would be different and my appreciation for comedy would be much different than it is. And so what it was I was pretty happy, like being a law school professor, you get paid pretty well, you have much more freedom than, let's say, being an associate in a law firm, which was a job that I did right out of law school for just shy of 2 years. And I had been teaching for the 6 years leading up till tenure, which is the clock for tenure at my school, and then I was granted tenure at I think it was like the beginning of my 7th year.
That's a big deal, right? That's a big deal to get tenure.
It is, in a way. I mean, it's sort of the thing where it's like kind of a bigger deal to get the job in the first place, to be totally frank with you, than it is to actually get tenure. Certainly there are cases in which tenure is a hard thing, but on the other hand, it's kind of like there are a lot of opportunities, much like I imagine there are at lots of other jobs in other industries, to sort of give you, you know, reviews along the way, so you kind of know if it's like going to happen or not. And like, yes, there are situations in which people don't get tenure, but you know the day you start the job that you're a tenure track professor. And conversely, you'd know that you're not if you weren't. And so that's all to say that, yes, it's a big deal. It's an accomplishment. It's all that. It's sort of the thing that you're going for the whole time you're there. It's part of your job title, but it's also part of your job title the day you start. And so it's simultaneously a big deal and not a big deal. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, basically, it's like if you get hired for the job, unless you do something crazy, you're probably going to stay there for 7 years. Probably going to...
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, that's sort of the tenure, the standard for tenure itself, is that you can keep the job unless you do something really outrageous. I think the standard for staying on the track is keeping up with your deliverables, as it were, and like the currency in my job was articles. And so you're writing stuff every year, and you either do or don't get a research grant on a yearly basis. You either do or don't get renewed every 2 years for regular contract renewals on the basis of your teaching evaluations. That's one piece. How you are as a colleague, because our school, like a lot of other schools, are faculty governed. And so you are on committees and you got to like perform on your committees. And then the third and final piece, but arguably the most important piece, is your scholarship, your research, your writing, the articles that you write every year that one person may read. So I did that, and it was 6 years was the clock. I got tenure, after that was done. And I think for me, it was achieving that kind of, summit, that thing that I was like I reached the goal. I got the thing that I was supposed to be wanting the whole time. And then I started to have not so much like an existential dread, but some kind of an existential moment about it, where I kind of was like, okay, I totally get that we were on this big, long hike up a mountain, but like, why did we come here? That sort of realization a little bit, and in some ways it was subtle. In other ways, like I definitely remember Googling one night while I couldn't fall asleep, how do you know what you want? Because I really had like that, I guess, emptiness to some degree about like, okay, I got the job that I was pretty sure within the, professional school that I went to, that was the best thing that I could think to do, was to be the person at the front of the room saying the stuff, and and making a decent living at it, and it's prestigious, and your parents like show off about you at Rosh Hashanah, and all these things are good and virtuous, or so I thought. But like, how do you know what you want, Google? And Google came back with unremarkable results, or at least unmemorable to me in this moment. But I think it sort of started me on a different track at that moment of my life, which was, how do I know what I want? What do I want? And so it was less like, straw that broke the camel's back than it was figuring out if there are other straws around. And I had taken an improv class a few years earlier, and I got in touch with the teacher who was no longer teaching that class. And I had, like, I guess a crush on her, but it wasn't like I wanted to like make out with her so much as I just wanted to like be around her teaching improv and acting and like just being fearless and amazing and all these things that I felt I had inside of me but wasn't, courageous enough to bring forth. And so I Facebook messaged her and I was like, I know you're not teaching, but can we do like one-on-one improv, which sounds like it might have an innuendo to it. And I totally didn't mean that. I just wanted to be anywhere she was, basically. And so we got together like for coffee, and she was like basically, I happened to have been on a half a bottle of Adderall and 18 shots of espresso because I had a dare with the barista at the coffee place that we met at, which is a whole other story. I don't do drugs anymore, and there's a reason for that. But I think that when we sat down for coffee, this improv instructor interpreted that hypercaffeination as stage presence, because she asked me, she was like, have you ever thought of doing stand-up comedy? And I was like, no, I'm like a tenured law professor, lady. And then she was like, well, would you consider doing it on my show? And if you'll remember, I had a crush on her. So I was just like, okay, are you going to be there? And of course she was. And so I did it. And the first time, and this is a joke in the clip, I believe, the first time I ever did it, it also came from a thing I said to my therapist. I felt like I was having a professional orgasm because it was
I've heard you say that before.
Yeah.
So it went well,
I mean,
obviously. It went well.
It did go well. Right. And for your listeners, I'll just finish the joke, which is that it was basically like a regular orgasm, but I was 100% sure that I was having it. And that was like really how it felt, and I guess it was like, I had been going on stages and like saying stuff for a long time, but it wasn't just like me. Like, hey, here's what I have to say, the most honest thing I can think of. And it turned out it was funny, and I wasn't trying really to be funny because I didn't know to try to be funny at that time. You know what I mean? Like, it's sort of, I guess that's like what beginner's luck is. It's not luck at all. It's just not knowing and not getting in your head about all the possible ways you could suck at something. And then once you start trying, then you're like, oh, I know the reasons that I'm not worthy. But anyway, so that happened. And the day after, okay, so like I have the professional orgasm, and it was like in this small theater in Chicago. It was basically like performing at a camp bunk. You know what I mean? Like for the other people at camp. That was what it basically was. But like the next morning, I was convinced that I had sold out Madison Square Garden to a whole arena of fans, and they all loved it. And I was like, I'm a celebrity. If this can be someone's job, then it has to be my job. And arguably still on some of the Adderall and some of that narcissistic high, I had this like download of, it was kind of like a daydream, but it was very clear. And it was just in, sort of a lightning bolt in my brain. And it was that I was a guest on The Tonight Show in this daydream. And I was asked, so Liz, you were a law professor for a decade and then you just decided to be a stand-up comedian. Now, the thing to remember is that in that moment, I had been teaching. This was my 7th year of teaching, year 7. Got tenure after 6. This was 7. He says, you were a law professor for a decade, then you decided to be a stand-up comedian. And in this daydream that I just received as a download, I said, actually, Jimmy, it was 9 years. And I was like, I think that's funny. Like, I know I just started being funny professionally last night, but we all know how well that went and we all know how famous I am. And I think that joke of rounding down from 10 to 9, where it's not in my favor, where I used to be a lawyer and then a law professor, and I also have this anxious personality where I'm like super into details, I think that's funny. And I told my mother, and she was like, Elizabeth, don't quit for a bit, especially if it maybe isn't even funny. And I like wrote that down on a piece of printer paper, but I couldn't get out of my head this like vision of 9 years to have the joke be, right, you were a law professor for a decade. Actually, it was 9 years. Okay, then 11 months after that first show, I receive a phone call from the dean of my law school. So the guy who makes the decisions about like budget stuff and whatever. And he's like, hey, Liz, I'm calling because we're having this like budget moment at school. They're fine now, but like whatever at the time. And we're offering all tenured faculty members buyout packages. And a moment like that, as maybe you or your listeners know, is I think designed to sort of avoid liability. You don't want it getting out. You want to like A, offer it to everybody regardless of age, and B, you don't want there to be a memo that someone could leak to a website and then everybody thinks, oh, the school's going under. So the way that you receive this information is you have like your paper planner, you're in your friend's car, and you're receiving all of the buyout options and you're writing them down. And so he's going on, he's like, oh, you could do half time, a quarter time, an eighth time. And it all, it's like sort of complicated with these tranches of commensurate rewards in accordance with whatever you might pick. And also you don't have to pick anything. It's just he has to tell you it. And then the second to last option was, or you could quit at the end of this year. And that was my 8th year, because it was 11 months after that first show with the download, which was the 7th year. And then the last option was, or you could quit at the end of next year. And I looked at my planner and I was like, that's 9 years. And so I said to my dean, I was like, I picked the last one. And he's like, you don't have to pick any of them. Like, that's not how this works. And I told him the exact story that I just told you.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, it's so unique the way that came about.
Yeah.
What school were you teaching at?
I taught at Hofstra Law School, which is on Long
Hofstra.
Island.
Okay, I thought you said how, and that's where you went to school.
No, I went to the University of Chicago.
Oh, that's what you were in Chicago. That's right. That makes more sense. Yeah, Chicago. Yeah. University of Chicago. It's an Ivy League school, right? It's a very good school.
You know, it's not an Ivy League school, but it is a very good school. Ivy League is like a designation for sports. And so I think it's all East Coast schools. I went to Penn for undergrad, so like that's Ivy League. But like Ivy League is not, I mean, it happens to coincide with good school, but not all good schools. Like Stanford is not an Ivy League school. It's on the West Coast. It's still an amazing school. Yeah.
It's a good school. Any school, it's hard to, yeah, that's good.
And same with Chicago, yeah.
So when you were there, like in law school, taking your classes and learning about, criminal law and stuff, were you joking about that, or were you funny about that, or were you just like all the other students just studying everything?
Right. Well, as a student, I mean, I wasn't the greatest law student. I think I was funny as a student because I had that was my personality and I had friends and whatever. But as a teacher, as a law professor, I think I was funny, or I got that was kind of a common thing that people would say, because it was natural for me to, I think, whenever I get down on myself for being not as funny as I'd like to be as a comedian, because the whole game is being funny, I'm like, well, very, very funny for a law professor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was a very, when did you start taking some classes or?
Sure. So I had visited at Loyola Chicago and took an improv class on that visit, because it was just it's kind of a normal thing when you're an academic to visit away. And so I had one of those semesters, and I knew Chicago from when I was at the University of Chicago as a student, and I knew that there was a big improv scene. And because my life as a tenure track person, and I say it that way because it was everything in my life was for this goal. And I kind of was craving at that time, that was my 4th year, I was craving something that just had nothing to do with any of that goal. And of course the irony is then, it is the thing that catalyzes my whole life. But that was the idea.
Yeah. And your parents are probably not thrilled with it.
Well, my dad's dead, so he's okay with it now. But my mom, this is also in the set that when I told my mom about the fact that I was planning to leave, she was like, what are you going to do for money? And that's also a real moment. And then I go into this whole thing about how I told her I could be a prostitute, which is also true. But anyway, I would say that they were and are respectively supportive of me, but similar, I think it's similar to how my parents would always say, about driving on a scary night, like Halloween or New Year's Eve or something, Elizabeth, it's not you, it's the other drivers on the road. They're just crazy. And that's been kind of my parents' way of couching their disapproval of something. And I don't think of it as I don't think they've ever been disingenuous in saying it that way. I think that's really what they believe. But for example, about me coming out as a lesbian, it's just well, we're not saying that we don't accept you. It's just your life is going to be harder. And I think similarly, when I came out as a comedian, it was less about well, we don't think you're funny. My parents have thought I was very funny always, but I think they're just listen, it's hard, it's hard to make it as a thing that you do for money.
Yeah.
They're not wrong.
That's true. That's true. That's true. So
Yeah.
did you have like other like role models, like even before you left, like other comedians that you looked up to and liked or watched or?
No, I didn't because I just didn't have it in my brain that that was like a thing that I was interested in thinking about.
Or
And so
did you watch
actually,
or go to movies even like somebody you like?
yeah, I guess, but like not like I am a very intense person, and when I'm like committed to doing a thing, I will then obsessively research that thing. And it just wasn't that for me. Like I had a crush on an improv instructor when that happened. So there was her, but like, and I remember Margaret Cho like growing up, and she would be on TV. And the reason I remember her was she would impersonate her parents. And my dad was from Latvia and had an accent, and I would do my dad's accent like for, my friends and family and whatever. And that was always something that was funny to them. I guess ironically, it's been like really hard for me to do that on stage. Not so much in Zoom in quarantine. I've been doing him more. He always wanted me to do that, and I think his death sort of propelled me to do him more, like in sets and stuff like that. But anyway, so I remember her. But then when I started doing comedy, I was like, I got to get a mentor. And so I was like, okay, Joan Rivers. And so I would like watch all this Joan Rivers. And then I actually went to see her. I met her. And I had a similar thing with Amy Schumer where I was like, okay, I think that we vibe the same. Like that's going to be my mentor. And since then, I think those have not been my mentors, but like, other people have been, and I've been very lucky, and, that's good, but it sort of came after.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah. So Joan Rivers was very encouraging and very helpful.
Well, I don't know about that, but I mean, when I met her, like I like made a point to meet her, and I gave her a Pellegrino. But then
That's a good start.
I mean,
That's a good. Yeah.
yeah, exactly,
You know.
right. Yeah, I mean, she had just gotten off a plane, and but no, we didn't have like a relationship, you know.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
good. Well, I got a clip of yours from
Yeah,
February, just a few months,
great.
which seems like 2 years ago, but it's a few months ago.
I know it.
Yeah, the guy knows seems like
I
he
know.
used to wear
All
pants.
my
Yeah.
jokes are irrelevant.
Well,
And
I'm gonna get the
actually,
clip, and I'm gonna get the clip, and then we can talk about. You can explain maybe later on what some of the
okay, sure.
insights of it are.
Great. Okay, awesome.
I can get this right here. It's coming up.
Oh, and this is great because you'll have my reaction to watching myself
Hopefully.
as part of the show.
Oh, Liz, I don't think I have it. I had it all set up. I don't know what happened to it.
Oh, well, I'll just send you the link right now. And then,
No, I stopped the sharing. I stopped the sharing. I'm recording now. I can get it again, but I can't do it now. It would be hard to.
oh, okay. Well, whatever.
I can do this again. I'll get it set up. I had it set up about 2 hours
Okay.
ago.
Yeah, no problem. It's all fine.
Ugh,
Ha! You're fine, Marty. Don't worry.
I'm not a computer person.
It's fine. The stakes couldn't be lower.
The stakes. Yeah, I know. I might want to do this. So the last time I saw it, I didn't realize it was the last time I saw it was in Thousand Oaks. Remember?
Hmm?
Yeah, it was outside, kind of an inside outside venue, and
I mean, honestly, it was sort of foretelling of the future of comedy because we were performing at that time outside without a specific reason to do so.
it was almost like some angel had me there that night to kind of get me used to it. It was kind of weird because I remember I was the door there, and I looked outside to look inside. I'd look outside, we were coming and going. It was just,
Yeah.
I felt it was good, but it was just kind of a not
Yeah.
a typical venue, not a typical thing. I remember
No,
you got that.
no.
You were very good. I remember that.
Thank you.
But it was
Thank you.
They're very good. Well, we'll get the thing set up next time. We can,
Yeah, sure. No problem.
we can do that again. Or you also can just perform it live, whatever you want to. But there
Yeah,
won't be a crowd
whatever
here.
you want.
You can miss a whole. The crowd was very good. It makes the crowd makes a big makes,
Yeah.
makes
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I've been doing a lot of like video editing in quarantine, and that set, I remember like in the moment feeling like, oh, I'm so glad I have that on tape or whatever. But like, I think it's that like the bad sets aren't as bad as you think, but the really good sets sometimes aren't as good as you think. Because I've tried to make some clips from that set, and I'm like, no, that's not quite it. And I've done other clips. I mean, I don't know how this comes across necessarily. I don't mean it to be like so like in my own head and judging myself, but I mean it actually like with hope, because I feel, I don't know, I feel like I've like been trying to like get better in quarantine, not necessarily at stand-up comedy because you can't literally do that, but at kind of the thing that propels me to be a stand-up comic, because I never meant to specifically be a stand-up comic. I was just trying to be myself, and I got this opportunity. I felt like I had to like come out of a shell like a lobster sort of thing. And so, like, yeah, stand-up's important, but ultimately I'm just like trying to like communicate in the most like ideas through my brain and my heart out my mouth to connect with people in front of me. And that's really what I'm trying to do. And so, when I look at some tapes, especially like that tape, I think has this element for me where it's like, okay, I did my jokes and they worked. But like, what are you doing, Liz? Like, why? And that set particularly causes me to have, I guess, a similar existential moment to the one before I left law.
with some people, it's like it's never. Some people, it's like they always want to just be better, no matter what they do. They
Yeah,
want to,
I guess there's something to that, and I take that point. But yeah, you're right. But I'm just trying to be purer. That's what I want. I just want to be the most me, unfiltered that I could possibly be. And I feel like the moments that I've had that aren't the same as the moments that I've like said my jokes right. I've had a couple sets on tape, which is nice, that I'm like, okay, I meant to say that. I planned it. I practiced it for months, and then it came out totally how I wanted it to. And it's not like it's perfect, but it's perfect for that moment. But yeah, it's an interesting game.
to be in the moment.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm much more aware of that than I was years ago. That's much.
Sure. Yeah, I try to be. And certainly I am also much more aware of it.
Yeah. I remember the first time you performed, there was a gentleman, and I use that term very loosely. And his bit was to get up there and call all the women bitches. It was lovely. That's in comedy
Yeah.
101. He called them all. I don't know what he was thinking. He called them all bitches, and
I mean,
he
it
didn't
was
have any
such,
jokes. And you got
right.
up there and you just went off on her for like a half hour.
It was fun. I
But that
remember
was he gave you a gift.
he did.
He gave.
And,
But you
when
didn't
I
plan
first,
that. I mean, and 2 hours before the show started, you didn't think I'm going to be doing jokes about this guy ripping him up. But
no,
it was like you just threw like an underhand softball. It was made it almost too easy for you.
right. Yeah. And it's like, those are the moments I love comedy the most, because it provides the opportunity to like connect a room on the basis of an energy that's there that you have the power to call out, and then empower everyone with laughter that is also connection, because we all experience that moment. And that's like elevating life, you
Yeah.
know and that's, I think, what I wanted to be doing, because I think if I had any sort of like existential crisis or whatever in law teaching, it was, why do we care about this? Like, what do you guys, you want to be lawyers? Like, why? And I think that there's, a way that like the way that I, like, as I've gotten better, I guess, at comedy, and I kind of like, okay, I have my jokes, I like know them, whatever. I'm just like, all right, well, that's cool. and I want to get better at that, but I didn't get into this to be in another like race and track and whatever. I'm just like trying to be the most me. And, but then of course there is my mother's voice of like, what are you going to do for money? So it's both,
Yeah. I think about the people that went to school and they went to business school and they get out and they started making like $90,000 a year and they're 22 years old. And it's like, man, I was 22 and I'm just, knocking down to get a telephone sales job. I mean, you couldn't get anything.
Right.
So I would feel some people just had it together much earlier.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
So you were more likely to be considered the smart kid in school and not the funniest kid in school.
Yeah, I think that's correct. Yeah. What about you?
When you do your writing, how do you take your approach of being like as studying lost? Do you have? I mean, you have a different intellectual approach. Some people just write stuff on napkins, or you just.
Right. I definitely do the napkin thing or the phone note thing and all that, and I try to like honor the moments that my brain does funny things, and I'm just like, oh, okay, yeah, that might be a thing. But I'm the most interested in when there's like a story to plot out and like thinking of, okay, what does this story mean, so that I can like say it in a moment to a group of people that it can really resonate with, and like, how can I build it out, I guess. I don't know. Yeah.
Like maybe to relate to them or something?
Yeah, I mean, I've honestly, like, when I write very, very quickly after I started doing comedy, I started thinking about a TV show. And so a lot of my interest in comedy is kind of like, okay, I want to like write a show and I want to act in that show. And so as a result of that, a lot of the things that I find the most interesting are like, okay, so what are the stories that I want to tell in that show? And some of those, find their ways into like my stand-up. But that's kind of the thing that interests me the most, as opposed to like, I don't know, the mathematics of the joke. I've gotten more into that, as I've done it more, but I don't think that's like where the heart of it is for me.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you were able to come by, and I'll get it set up next time. I
Yeah.
don't ask what happened.
It's fine. Don't worry.
We'll do it again. We'll do it again. I'll memorize it, and I'll do your jokes.
Oh, fun! I would love that.
I'll talk about being a lesbian. I'll talk about whatever.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, it won't work very well. Yeah. But Liz, I thank you so much, and stay safe.
Yeah, same.
And hopefully we can do this again then.
I'd love that.
Great. Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, bye.